The business scale-up program is here to support you with 40% funding towards your training and development needs. And we're going to talk something that doesn't get talked about very often, but it should be, and that's new managers. And that is something that often I find, gets overlooked. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's quite often a hindsight thing, isn't it?
It is the hindsight thing. Yeah, you're right. It's too late. The horse is bolted, as
your
it were.
best friend that's always late.
In your eyes, in your experience, there are different sorts of new managers, aren't there? So, who's the most vulnerable? Would you say? Because new managers are vulnerable, and that's the thing that does get overlooked.
Well, one of the biggest questions I think I've had, certainly in conversations, has been that internal promotion. So somebody who's potentially been with the business for quite some time, really good at the job, knows the business inside out, and has had that opportunity to be promoted to a manager internally and manage their own team. And then that comes with the big transition of friend to manager.
Yeah, that's a good one, yeah.
Friend to manager.
Yeah, that's tough.
So I think anybody who's not only the individual making that transition, but a manager who's actually actively promoted that person, to recognise that might be an issue before it happens.
Yeah. When I was at college, I studied something called the Principles and Practice of Management, and it was always an interesting conversation as to whether a manager is born or whether a good manager is made. Nobody really knows the answer because there is no right or wrong answer, but I think it's somewhere in the middle. I think a good manager has some innate personality traits that would suit some new managers, but also training has to happen. You have to support that person to become the best that they can be.
And probably like the training side of it, it's ongoing. Like I don't think you get to a stage where you're a CEO and your training should stop in terms of management and leadership. I think that should be something that is just ongoing because, like we've spoke about before, generations change and you might be used to leading a certain group of people, but that's going to change over time.
Yeah, I look back to when I was younger, managers when I was younger were very much more forceful. I would say more. They felt freer to say what they felt, or they just we're going to say it anyway. So that landscape itself has changed now. The way you have to, even the way you might need to discipline someone, is changed. You can no longer. Thank God, hurl abuse. Yes, that was common when I was growing up. It probably still is in some quarters, if I'm honest. But the whole thing's changed. So for a new manager to come into that from fresh, that's a hell of a task, and not give them any support at all. I would argue it's setting them up to fail.
Well, yeah, because you're not giving them that support or empathy in the fact that you understand that transition could potentially be quite a big move for that person.
That's life-changing. Yeah. Potentially life-changing.
Particularly for a new manager, so if it's their first experience as a manager.
Yeah.
And then I think there's something to be said for small businesses in particular who are potentially bringing in an external manager for the first time.
That's always tricky.
If you have done all of the things yourself, because you can do them quicker, if you just do it yourself, and you finally thought, actually, I've only got 2 pairs of hands and 1 brain and I need some sleep, so I would like to bring in some support to know how to guide that person. One of the things as well is that person might be coming from a corporate background, so they might be used to a bit more formality and structure, which isn't always the case in a small business.
They might have to wear a tie.
They might have to, yeah.
It's still a thing in some places. You have to, a dress code. You have to wear a tie. It does still exist in some places.
So bringing somebody in and saying, do you know what? You don't need to worry about wearing a tie here.
Yeah, that could be that. That in itself could make someone extremely happy. Yeah. You're wearing a tie for 30 years. Some say you don't have to wear one anymore.
You don't have to wear a tie.
You can untuck your shirt, take your tie off.
That's the honest conversations coming out, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah. So what kind of support would you say a new manager would benefit from? Let's say they're fresh to, I've promoted you, congratulations, you start tomorrow.
Definitely the delegation side of things.
That's like a you can do a 1-day workshop, can't you? Or you can do a bit more of a full on.
Yeah, and some of the more intensive trainings and coachings that we have on Scale Up offer one-to-one support as well as like the team workshop sessions as well. So you get a session with a coach while you're in your group training. And in that one-to-one session, it could be something really specific, such as I'm now managing a team that includes my best friend and I'm finding that difficult and I don't know how to deal with that. And that could be a conversation that you would rather have with an expert external coach than your manager.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's where this kind of steps into its own, really. It gives them the space to have that conversation.
I like it, especially like, because I know what it's like to be a new manager and not have that kind of know that someone's got your back. They just expect you to go ahead and do that. Right, that's your job now. Go off and crack on. Yeah. It's not as easy as that. So a manager who has been kind of well supported. No, it doesn't just support them as individual, because it's not necessarily about them. No. It's about all the people that they manage as well. They're then in turn better looked after, better supported, and much more likely to stay and work hard for their manager who has built the respect with them.
Exactly. And that all leads to better productivity. You've got people turning up, not got people ringing in sick.
Yeah. If I was working for someone who was a new manager and who wasn't getting any support, and that manager was not doing very well for me, I'd leave. Yeah. As would anybody.
And there's a lot of conversations happening now where people are leaving without saying, do you know what, I'm not comfortable with this person being my manager. Yeah. They'd rather just, I'll find a job and I'll just leave.
I'll go somewhere else. Such is the nature of the labour market, particularly at the minute. It's almost a buyer's market. You can pretty much go wherever not like it used to be. You can pack your bags and find on a Friday and potentially find somewhere new on a Monday. That hasn't been like that for decades.
And that's one of the good things about the Scale Up offer, because it might be that somebody just needs to learn one part of being a manager, such as delegation or having a conversation. Like you say, somebody might come with a natural trait, so it might become a bit easier. So they might only need a one-day workshop. Okay. So they book a one-day workshop, 3 months' time, they might think, actually, do you know what? I could really do some coaching. Yeah. Can I book a coaching session for 4 hours? Yeah. Of course you can.
Yeah. Or I'm having trouble with a particular individual. I'm not quite sure, the best way to bring the best out of them. What do I do? And kind of certainly the program. I know there are lots of programs out there, not just ours, but ours does have a lot. It is heavily focused on this kind of stuff because we all know it does get overlooked, but it is massively important.
Yeah. So the leadership and management side is definitely worth having the conversation in itself.
Okay. Thanks for listening. See you next time.